but I am a physicist. And physics is, science in general, is based on rationality. So there is a connection, a general connection between science and rationalism in general. Now, in the current situation, worldwide in fact, it is not quite the 1930s, but we are seeing some very dark anti-rational forces which are coming on the horizon. And it's good in some sense because it forces us to think about what we believe and why we believe it and how did we come to be. In other words, it forces us to think about rationalism, rationally. There is also, as was mentioned, a larger framework in which people who think in a certain way want to convince others. And that also makes us think about what are the barriers to conversion from one point of view to the other. And I think we need to boil down or reduce whatever one believes into a minimal set. Mm-hmm. And I've interacted with people, I also have religious people in the family. I don't think it has anything to do with religion, the minimal set. If you ask me what are the essential aspects, well, there is a friend of mine who is in fact involved with the rationalist movement in India, extremely active, brave, intelligent person, Narendra Kamath, Mangalore. And he speaks about a couple of things. And I would say that the first is, at least in the Hindu tradition, fake Swamijis. Mm-hmm. And the second is, what do you do when somebody disagrees? The whole point about science is that you discover laws of nature. There are regularities in nature. And the famous physicist Eugene Wigner once said, the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. So there is a pattern, and the language of nature is mathematics. And once we understand that, this gives us enormous understanding. Everything is interconnected. You cannot say that the laws of physics are there for physics, but in biology they suddenly don't apply. Or astronomy, it suddenly doesn't apply. There is a unity, there is a sweep, there is a wholeness. So, one thing one has to do in rationality, since this is a product of rationality, is to convey that wholeness. And this thing about fake godmen, and India has many of them. They are perhaps one of our major exports. And if you look at it, their attitude among many of my relatives is they feel the laws of nature can be broken. Okay, maybe an extremely holy person or something can have direct contact with nature and put a manual override on the laws of nature. But they believe, well, it can be done casually. But if it can be done casually, then it's not the law of nature. So they then run behind these people and in some sense even give up their own personal lives to the arbitrary decision of this one person. And so this is a component. The desire to be absolved of responsibility by handing over to somebody else, and he is only too happy to take it, and perhaps also take your money, and also show you some magic miracles. And so I think this is one of the components, the minimal set. laws of nature are not easily broken, and if somebody makes these big claims, don't immediately say yes, yes, holy man, wearing holy robes. Just as you go and buy vegetables, you do not accept the first price. 3,000 rupees a kilo for potatoes, and you don't say, "Ha, Swamiji, go take." You sort of say, what is it? Where does it come? Is there a shortage? Maybe you use rationality in your daily life in making choices. Maybe I go somewhere else and get something cheaper. So just as there is a critical thinking or a skepticism in buying vegetables in your daily life, similarly, you should have it when you get somebody who makes big claims to violate the laws of nature, and then says, "Give me your life to decide for you," and third says, "Please make contributions." This is one of the components of which we have to say. And notice, I'm not saying that the people should give up their daily religious routine. Fine. In fact, whatever gives human beings comfort, fine. You cannot say that, "Oh, that's irrational." First of all, it defeats your purpose because you want the minimal set to go through. And also, if you look at it, we also have our own sources of comfort when we have disasters or tragedies. So why not let them have it as long as they do not violate this minimal condition? The second minimal condition is, what do you do if somebody disagrees with you? And the extreme types of people, well, you kill them, right? Whether you have extreme types in religion A, B, C, there is no rational argument. There is truth and there is falsehood, and falsehood is evil, and evil people should be killed. This is a common thread. I'm not saying in religion, of course not. In fact, this is the point I'm trying to make. Neither of these two threads, automatic belief in violation of laws of nature or automatic assassination of those who disagree, neither of them is a crucial component of religion. And if we say rejection of these two is our minimal set, we will have achieved a great deal. Now you may want to achieve other things, which is a separate issue, but I would say think about the minimal set. And when approaching people or trying to convince people, just tell them, these two things are not right. And you will find surprisingly large number of people say yes. Then you can talk about other things. To go back to my friend in Bangalore, after doing all this business of exposing fake Swamijis and he gave a nice demonstration in Hyderabad, produced fake vibhuti, and you make something. When you rub it, it becomes a powder. There are many ways of doing it. He explains it also. And he gets death threats. So the first minimal set, the second minimal set are in fact connected because you cut the source of income to these people. And there are many saintly people who are religious, but perhaps one should not classify these people as religious. Those who do blind belief in God-men who violate the laws of nature, and those who want to assassinate those who disagree with them. Maybe that is part of the argument in trying to spread general ideas of rationality. I would say somebody talked about tradition and so on. I would say, if you look at it, most of our human interactions are governed not by irrationality, but by custom, by tradition, right? I was mentioning this, I meet somebody from South Asia. "Oh, Subodh, how are you?" This, and we haven't seen for a long time. We meet, and he's from North India, I'm from South India. Gale laga do, laga do. So 3 times. And we do it without thinking. Now, who has told us this? Custom. Is it good or evil? It's neither. Australian, I may do this and thump him on the shoulder. It's neither good nor evil. It is part of human interactions, and you cannot say it's irrational. Why irrational? Because it has not been derived from some rational principle. No, 75% of our human interactions are based on this kind. And it is good, our music, our culture, our dress, right? So, do not attack these things because they are part of people's identity and they are part of our own identity. Focus on this minimal set and then talk about other things. And I think one would make some amount of progress. Finally, let me end by saying that I talked about political upheavals and people get depressed, but listen, it's nothing like the 1930s in Europe, which led to World War, tens of hundreds of millions of people killed and so on. But the seeds, history is not repeating, but it is rhyming. And what we have here is a lack of faith in evidence-based policy. A belief that everything is fixed. If you do not believe in the concept of truth, you are surrendering to those who will impose their truth. If truth is not separate from power and independent, then power becomes truth. Yeah. If you read, there's a book by Hannah Arendt, who wrote after the Second World War, on origins of totalitarianism. Yeah. And she writes that one of the first things which was attacked by extreme groups on right and left is this concept of independent truth. Yeah. Because if everything is serving some purpose, then power determines what is true. The second thing which comes up in these kind of debates is rationality, in the sense of it's connected. Independent minds thinking and finding the truth, and many minds doing this without being attacked. You see the connection with what I mentioned earlier. You need an atmosphere of freedom. You need democracy and rationality for this whole system to function. And what I'm trying to say is, perhaps center left and center right, who believe in different economic systems. I won't tell you which I am, but they agree on democracy and rationality and evidence-based policy. They fight about what is the evidence, how you get it, know this, and policy. But evidence-based policy, I think that is a crucial component of rationality, and I think these groups have to come together in order to battle some of these forces which are they're coming up, they'll go away. I'm basically optimistic. There is the Indian national motto, Satyam Eva Jayate. So truth ultimately triumphs. And I feel that rationality with organizations such as this, seen in the right way, will ultimately triumph. Thank you.
I have one question. I mean, it would be very nice if you talk about these two types of rationality.
Yeah, I was going to, but then that's a second order, as you say in engineering and physics. It's a second order effect. Okay, so any comments on what I said up till now? That the concept of when convincing people a minimal subset of what we ask, laws of nature cannot be violated so easily. Use the same skepticism that you use for buying vegetables instead of buying somebody else's orders. And secondly, live and let live, don't kill people who disagree. This is, but you have to realize that there are people who believe in purity. All these psychological things are correct. What is purity? Removal of impurity. why do you attack this group? He is not really one of us. And then you define one of us by racial or religious or whatever you want. So he should be removed. So if you look at these movements, they all have a target audience. And there is a group which is the target. And get rid of them, and their real enemy is the people in their so-called group who disagree with them. And then they will say, they are even worse than this group because they are supporting it. So this notion of purity, of removing things, it all goes back to imposing one single view, larger. Let's go back to rationality. You may think rationality by itself is good. Yes, but actually there are two types of rationality. And it's not my idea. There's a liberal writer, of course I've given away which part of the spectrum I am. There's a liberal writer called Friedrich Hayek, passed away quite some time ago. And he wrote about how to make a good society, how to make a legally just society, what is the meaning of the rule of law, what is the constitution of liberty. And he passed away. And then there was a reviewer who was writing and noted that this writer and other writers believed in rationality. But, and this reviewer, which I've forgotten, Englishman, said there are two types of